Welcome, everybody, to Cycle Jerks Podcast, episode 127. I'm Mike Stewart, your host, and I'm joined today by the forcefully retired Dave Dalton.
Temporarily, yeah.
Temporarily, forcefully retired.
Can I have some more, please? Can I have some more?
And today's a special day for us. We're honored to be joined by adaptive athlete Willie Stewart. We first learned of Willie's story through previous guests, Matt Fitzgerald's book, How Bad Do You Want It? And the story's incredible. And we're just super happy to have this guy on the podcast. Willie, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I've been waiting for this one for a long time. So
yeah. Yeah. It's an incredible story, Willie. And you know, one of the things that we do on the podcast is we like to find out when somebody first got interested in the bicycle. And it sounds like prior to your accident that the bicycle maybe wasn't that big of a part of your life. Is that fair to say, or did you have a relationship with cycling prior to your accident?
No, you're exactly right. In 1980, because I wrestled, play football, and rugby, cycling my pocketbook. Because one, I had no money. You know, I'm 17 years old.
Yeah,
and I come from a family of 8 kids, so there is no money.
Yeah.
There's good bleeding knuckles, but there's no money.
Yeah, 8 kids. So I had to fight for every meal, I'd imagine.
And it was every day was just a fight. I thought that was normal.
Yeah.
Right. How many of those were brothers? How many were sisters?
6 boys, 2 girls.
Okay.
Oh, shit, they were outnumbered, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, but the girls, I have 2 sisters that are incredible. And then the rest of the boys, as my mother was said, they're no good pieces of shit.
Yeah. Well, I'd imagine those are 2 of the toughest gals you're going to run into.
I think they're sick. They just got sick of us and they moved out of the house early.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, hey, Willie, why don't you take us back to, you know, how you got started, what, you know, the events that led up to you becoming an adaptive athlete, and you know, yeah, if you could share that story with us, that would be great.
Yeah,
It's
a tricky story because it has, you know, and it's still unfolding, and I'm going to be 62 years old, but it unfolds all the time because that's the word adaptive. You're changing so much. And then I'm a big fan of the word resilience too. And resiliency. And I was a wrestler and I was undefeated. I was a state champion, blah, blah, blah. I played football in all district. And I was a pretty good athlete. You know, you think you're way better than you. When you look back, you go, wow, I really had a sense of that I was like, nothing could stop me. That's how I thought.
Yeah.
And I'm working up on the Watergate building, a summertime job in 1980, August 15th. And I was pissed off at a guy I was working with because it was a dirt ball job and I was a dirt ball. So I understood it, but we worked hard every day, and, you know, and then we'd play rugby or not, you know, we do our thing. And I loved all my brothers and sisters and my family, and we worked together, some of us. And I was on the Watergate building in Washington, D.C., and on the 15th floor, there's cooling towers that cool off monstrous buildings. I was inside the tower and I yelled at a guy because I was pissed, and he threw a rope in because I wanted it, but it went over the shaft and I got pulled into the shaft, and my arm has a rope burn, which is here. And then it snapped. It went around the elbow, cleaned it off, basically like a chicken bone. It's kind of disgusting, but
wow.
And then snapped my hand off. But I didn't know that. I was just pissed. I was like, God, I thought I broke my shoulder. I thought I broke my ribs. I thought I might have broke my hip because I hit the ceiling really hard inside the fan and the cooling tower. So I took a lot of little hits all over the body. And I fall on the ground, and right in front of me was my own hand. And I looked to my left, and I go, oh, that's my hand. And that's, wow. And the part that was kind of disgusting about it was, and disgusting is this whole story, but I was bleeding pretty profusely at the time. And it was and it was shooting all over the place, but no one could come in there and help me. So I had no choice but to get off my ass and get out of there, because you wouldn't.
Wow.
Why would you go after you've seen what came out of the hole? And they couldn't shut the machine down, and not that I even cared. And I dove out of the hole with my hand and passed that off to a guy named Brad. And then I pushed my bicep that was dripping down my forearm up into the cavity, and everything stopped bleeding. And I was like, cool. And I got up and I ran to the edge of the building, jumped in a crane pan that was where debris would go from the construction site. And I took that crane pan down to, I think it was New Hampshire Avenue in Washington, D.C., heading up to Washington Circle. And I bounced off a few cars down the middle of the street, leaving just horrifying streak of blood on the cars. And then my brother pulled up in a truck. I jumped in the back of the truck, and he cut down through a park because it was rush hour traffic. And he's throwing me all over the place. And I tap on the back of the truck and I said, stop. And he goes, why? I go, I'm getting out, because he was killing me. And I just ran the rest of the way in the hospital. And on the way into the hospital, my father happened to be standing there, which is unexplainable to this day. And he called.
Wait. Completely random. Your dad is just there, like. Wow.
I have my brother, who was with me, has no idea how Dad got there. And the big part of this story that I think is more important is not that I lost my arm, but my dad was there. And I had a bad relationship with my dad over the last couple of years, because when I was a freshman in high school, I think I set a state record with all my family in the crowd, and I got pinned in 14 seconds in a wrestling match with the crowd. And I'm like, and my dad goes, you might want to hang this up. I'm like, geez,
give me a break.
Anyhow, he catches me stumbling in the hospital. He we walk in. I didn't need to be carried. He throws me on a stretcher. They wheel me off because they knew I was coming. They wheel me off into the emergency room. And I woke up the next morning, or 8 hours later, and heard all the beeping like you hear in a hospital. And I looked up, and I didn't want to look over to my left side, which is my left arm. And I was like, I think I lost my arm. And then I looked over and I go, F word,
Yeah.
And that was that feeling. If you can capture that, anyone captures that, you just need to remember that for the rest of your life. Because that feeling of uselessness, despair, sadness, emotional, just swirling the toilet. And then the facial expressions of everyone I saw on the way to the hospital, because I was conscious, wide awake, and how horrified people were to look at me. Yeah. That was a motivating force, possibly to this day, because I am not that. I'm not someone like that you need to be horrified by. Like, my behaviors can be horrifying, but my look shouldn't bug you at all, because it doesn't bug me. And so my dad carried me in, and it was a life-changing experience. And it was kind of a difficult 2 years of my life, because I kind of gave up,
Yeah.
So immediately following it, I mean, you seem so optimistic and upbeat, but immediately following it was, and understandably so, some tough times, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but it isn't understandably so, because it's totally different now here in this year. Here we are 40-some years later. Now you could chop your arm off today and click on YouTube and see 51 arm guys kicking ass.
Right.
But back, you didn't see no one kicking ass. Yeah. A couple people I met over my years, but boy, they were motivating. But no one was more motivating to anyone, and hardly anyone knows this, than doing something with Shriners Hospital. And I see a bunch of kids that are missing their limbs, and they had their shit together. I didn't, but they did. Yeah. And I was supposed to be there to motivate them. But those kids just changed my life. And I'm like, why doesn't anyone tell any of your stories? Every one of you kids is a badass. And they're like, we are? Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so happy when I met those kids.
And when did you meet them now?
I'd say maybe a year and a half after my arm. Because a year and a half later, and this is just a funny side story, but it's the way I am. So I lose my arm. I'm a workman's comp guy. And they go, well, you got to wait till you heal before you can do anything. And I go, oh, really? And they go, and then we're going to put you in rehab. And I go, when's that going to happen? They said like 6 months later. I go, really? So you're going to pay me still? And they go, yeah. And I go, where do you put that money? And they go, in your checking account. And I go, okay. And I went down the street to a travel agent and went to Australia.
Yeah.
But via Tahiti, Hawaii. I was like, I'm a dirt bag. I've never had money in my life. It's like $500 a month, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, perfect.
Because they're paying you to stay home, so you got on a plane, right?
Yeah, and they are paying you to stay home, and that's part of the system. All my brothers and sisters that are traumatically injured or something happens, progressive, neurological, anything, they're encouraged to. It's like the system encourages you to disappear, and the reactions when you see I can do that, like, how are you going to do that? It's like, I'll figure it out, but don't prejudge what I can or cannot do. And, you know, that goes into like Leadville, and we tell stories about that. But, you know, I was basically not into Leadville because I was missing an arm, and they said, you're going to hurt yourself and it hurts someone else. Yeah. And I know we were headed to where cycling began, but that's kind of where it began, because I lost my arm. I had a bicycle that I could possibly learn to ride and take care of myself, but I didn't know how to ride with one hand, and I had no adaptive ideas how a bike would work. But I got a job in Washington, D.C. as a courier, a messenger, because nobody would give me a job, and I figured it out on the fly on a 2000 or 1981 Ross steel bike, you know, the chrome. And I put some slicks on it, and then the guy gave me a radio and goes, have at it, go kill yourself if you want. You got to show up at 7 morning and ride till 7 o'clock at night. And that's what I did for 5 years.
Wow.
And wow.
And I loved it. And I loved it. I felt alive in that bike. The confidence I got on that bike transformed me in a lot of other ways. And then I also got back on the rugby field, and that's in that, how bad do you want it? You know, getting back on a rugby field with one arm and not making a fool of yourself. I was scared about that.
Yeah.
But I was more scared.
But I mean, so you built up the confidence, but was it the turning point really meeting the kids at Shriner, and all of a sudden did some bell go off that you said, I just want to go kick some ass, or what?
No, I mean, I think the rugby field is when it really turned. You know, I mean, listen, losing your arm is no picnic. And then the pain that comes associated with the injury and stuff is no picnic. And I figured out how to protect the arm. The Shriner kids gave me hope because they were all good at what they did. And I felt like I wouldn't be any good. And I'm like, these kids showed me I can be anything I want. Yeah, the Shriner kids those kids showed little stupid things that we don't think about because we're not geared to be adaptable until we need to be.
Yeah.
And a lot of athletes are. I mean, a lot of athletes just have that. You're switching little things all the time. But I, as a disabled person, I was not feeling that. I was feeling what society said. You're broke, dude. You're hurt.
Yeah.
So sad, too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What motivated me more than anything probably was the loneliness associated with disability. You know, that you're out of your groups, your friends, your brothers, your sisters. You're out of the game.
And so you had a history with rugby, so now you go back into that's in and itself. Like, I'm trying to figure out how you make that leap. Like, that's amazing that I'm saying, okay, I'm going to go back in. I got to tackle people. I got to catch balls. I got to do all this shit. And I don't know. I guess there's a lot of easier things you could have chosen, but go ahead.
You know, that's the thing is, I think that shows it. And I think my weapon was that I probably was way better with one arm than I ever was with two. And I was pretty fast. I was very fit. I was pretty strong. And I've been playing the game a long time. So, and rugby is just, the style of it is own the ball, never lose the ball, move with the ball, move forward, and you'll win a lot of games. And so what happened to me in that time, and that's what's in the How Bad You Want It, was that I was pretty good, and I was playing against some of the best players in the country, but I would never be able to move up. And the coach basically said, you're going to be on the B team. And I was scoring, like, sometimes I scored 5 tries in a game, which is like unheard of, but B team. And I'm a better athlete than everyone out there.
Yeah.
And I could catch better. When I had 2 hands, I couldn't catch at all. And I had a real good skill set with the ball. And the funny part is like, a couple of my friends that were playing, and they were college rugby players that went on to club in Washington, D.C. We all showed up on the same club at the same time. We all played together, and the rest is history. But basically, we were really a top-notch team in the United States for almost a decade.
Wow. Yeah.
And I moved to A side, and I never left the A side. I never played a lower side game for my time there, and I played on a sevens ERU, which is East Coast Rugby Union national champion team. And that's sevens. That's all ball handling. So you're trying to figure out, how can you handle a ball so well with one hand? But that's the whole game. It's like, most people have a ball and they hold it with 2 hands, and it could be right or left. But I hold the ball like this, and I can pass behind my back, over my head, off my back, off my shoulder, or I can spin this way. And it was like, all it takes is a step, a shoulder roll, or whatever, and then never lose the ball, never drop the ball. And that was my commandment. And I never wanted my one arm to be an excuse that was the reason I sucked. If I sucked, it's because I had a bad game, but not because I had one arm.
Yeah. Wow. It's a mindset. I mean, you think, and that's one of the things we love about that book from Matt, is it covers all these different stories of these athletes and how they overcome these challenges in their mind. They've overcome physical challenges also, but so much of it is in your mind. And, I don't know the game rugby very well. Obviously we watch a lot of football, and I know that, like, in football, there's a lot of people trying to, like, they're constantly trying to swipe the ball and knock the ball loose. And you see guys a lot of times in football where they'll have both hands on top of the football and they're just running, and so I can't, just trying to envision, the change that you made to be effective in that regard. I mean, how did you hang on to that ball when others were trying to swipe it?
That's the secret. Is here's the most damaging piece, which is that I watch football players fumble all the time. Like, it's forbidden. How do you fumble? Well,
right.
But it's like, your job is protect the pill. Like, a turnover in football it's humiliating.
Yeah.
It's even worse in rugby. It's even worse. So you can't do that. So I would hold the ball. And remember, I'm a wrestler, and so I know what angles are and leverage.
Yeah.
But the number one, say I'm like running right in the camera, right at your chin. I keep a low stance, and then this arm, boom, is so freaking powerful. It just knocks people right on their ass. And coming. And I'm like recommending, like, you gotta cut an arm off.
Oh my gosh.
I loved it because, like, I have so many buddies that hopefully you got to let Washington Rugby Club send it to them, but they'll love it. They're Washington Rugby Football Club, but they'll love it because they'll go, I've been on the receiving end of that, and I've had my ass handed to me on a rugby pitch before, but that had nothing to do with this. It just happened to be, now and then someone chimes up. But when you hit with that leverage at a low stance, you win your ball all the time. And then a ball bouncing around the field, most people, like, you see pro football players reach down to the ball to grab it, like in a fumble situation.
Yeah.
I would always dive on the ball, feet, slide, scoop with arm, tight, back to your feet. But I never, I really became focused on the ball. And when I had 2 hands, I mean, my friends will say, God, dude, you had the worst hands in the world.
Yeah.
Drop a ball. So I'm recommending it. It's a little painful at first, but it comes out.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And it really is incredible to think that, you turn this thing that's perceived as this negative into a real positive for you on the pitch, and not just on the pitch, and far beyond the pitch, as we're going to find out here at the rest of the podcast.
Yeah. What's really interesting too, Dave, is that success, which most athletes get it, and everyone gets it in their profession or field they go into, that success is addictive, you know.
Yeah.
And I like I said, to this day, I will never stop putting myself out there. Even in failure, I will still put myself out there. Not because I'm addicted to the success as much as I'm addicted to that you can't message anything until you get out there. And someone who's too scared to get on the rugby field, actually, that's not an excuse. And
Yeah.
rugby is motherhood and sisterhood now because the women are so unreal good.
Yeah.
The women, our American women, are just unbelievable. But the
Awesome.
women unreal good. And rugby and that bicycle, those two things together created success. And most people with disabilities are begging and searching for success. I just found it in such a bizarre place, the rugby pitch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And so from rugby, where do we get to cycling as an endurance endeavor,
Yeah.
right?
So that's a good story too. So I was playing rugby and I would go cross country skiing because I taught alpine skiing in Colorado at Keystone, Breckenridge, A Basin.
Oh, wow.
And I worked in Vail a little bit. I worked at Copper Mountain. And I was an adaptive instructor and ran an adaptive ski school called the Breckenridge Outdoor Education Center in Breckenridge, Colorado, but really good school. And it was great because I could give back to other people. But
Yeah.
I was also playing, and I was a party animal, had a ton of fun all the time, but I trained really hard, loved to throw weights. And to stay in shape, I'd go Nordic skiing. You know, I'd go down to the bar maybe after work and then go Nordic skiing after the bar. And I'd go out and I'd ski all the time. And I would jump in ski races, Nordic races. And so one day someone says, "Hey man, do you mind if you come down to Salt Lake City, US Ski Team headquarters in Park City, Utah?" And they go, "We want to do a VO2 max test on you. And I see if you got what it takes." I go, "Well, what if I do have what it takes?" And he goes, "Well, you might have a shot at making this team. And then, you can travel all over the world." I go, "Well, now that sounds good."
Yeah, you got me. Now you got me. Yeah. But
Uh,
before you get too far, wasn't there a point at which you tried running, like even before rugby? I think you tried some marathons or something.
No, I did a rugby thing and I ran a marathon. And just so you know, I did run a marathon in 3 hours and 40 minutes when I weighed 210 pounds.
Wow.
And when I ski raced, I weighed 155 to 160,
Holy shit. Yeah.
And I know that just from wrestling. Pounds matter, and cardio and weight, excess weight matters. So I did do a running race, and it was my mom, who just passed away 2 weeks ago,
sorry to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, and everyone says sorry to hear that. And I go, "You haven't met my mom." Like my mom. My mom, she's probably one of the toughest ladies. She drank like a fish, smoked like a chimney, and she didn't want a wussy little kid sit inside the house crying about their injury. And she goes, "Make me a promise." She goes, "I need you to show up at a 5K downtown on Sunday morning and run it for a good charity." And I'm like, "Oh." And I went there and I sat on the start line. I don't even think I went home to bed, because that's kind of the lifestyle I lived.
Wow.
And I did it. And I almost came in last, but I beat one guy or girl. I don't know who I beat, but I beat someone. And at that time, the person probably was 97. And I took it as a win. I'm like,
yeah.
And I kind of liked it. I liked it because that was another one of those social moments. Like, I liked the scene and I felt I could be better. I mean, I felt like I didn't give my best self at that time because I still was a little struggly. Yeah. And then I went away for a while, and that's when the rugby thing was all going on too.
Got it.
And then I did run a marathon just on and after the marathon, I went through the finish line and I went to the Washington football team's pro game and drank a ton of beer. That there's a reoccurring theme and yeah, but I did do a race, and it was a 5K, and I kind of sucked, but it was okay. I mean, I knew it. 'Cause, I mean, I've run marathons in 2:40s. I won the Catalina Marathon. I mean, which is considered one of the harder marathons in the United States. And but I wasn't a runner. I only ran because I used to lose weight to wrestle. So I ran a lot
Got
because
it.
I lost
Okay.
45 pounds as a wrestler. You know, I went
Right.
from 190 or 185 down to 145. So,
Right. And if I
which is,
remember in the book, Matt was saying, I mean, you were in a pretty legitimate state of depression and were also drinking heavily. Is that fair to
yeah,
say?
no one knows they're drinking heavily until you but that's all I had was every night was like, oh wow, we're gonna go out. Where are we gonna go tonight? Like I'll go out and ass out every night. That was my new thing. Go out,
Yeah.
ass out. And that's but that's that 2 year period, you know. And luckily I was traveling too at the same time, and I was kind of hiding overseas. I was in California for a little bit too. But that was before I bounced back. You know,
Yeah.
and definitely was about, and it was a tough 2 years. I mean, self-reflection, it was important,
Right.
you know. And then I had to, you know, I had to remake myself. And so that's kind of why I left the East, though, because it was like a lot of people didn't know my rugby background or my sport background, felt sorry for me still. And I'm like,
Hmm.
why are you still feeling sorry for me? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not on the couch. I'm out every day getting it, you know.
Yeah.
And then you see people over like, it's so terrible what happened to you. And it's like, do you guys even have a clue what I might have been if this didn't happen?
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I'm I'm a I'm a father of two. I'm in my 60s. I have a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old. You
Oh
know, I
boy.
show up for them every day. You know, am I any good at it? I'll tell you one thing: two-arm Willie wouldn't have been any good at it. One
Oh
arm
man.
Willie seemed fired okay, but I'm not perfect. No parent's perfect. And, you know,
Yeah. Well, speaking of parents, I mean, obviously your mother getting you to that race. I mean,
yeah.
that was a turning point moment, right? I mean, uh
Oh,
you were living this lifestyle and dealing with you know that kind of start you on this path that you're still on today.
oh yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
my mom. You know, I don't think she would like anyone. This is my opinion, not my brothers and sisters or whatever. I'm not gonna. She's not one of those people going, don't cry. She's a don't cry for me girl,
Hmm.
and she never wanted to be someone to be pitied. And she was a tough cookie in her own way, different era.
Yeah.
And my dad passed away probably 10 years prior to that. And she, you know, she hung on till she was 92 years old.
Yeah.
No.
Awesome. Well, here's the moms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Best one
Well,
I
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
so how did you make it out to Colorado? Like, so there's and then
yeah,
you get into the skiing thing, right? So, and I'm still dying. I want to know the results of the VO2 max, but let's figure out how you got to Colorado.
yeah, it was pretty high. You know, I I'm riding my bike in the city, and I have a friend who says, "Hey, I want you to talk to my buddy." And you know, I guess some people thought I was going nowhere with my life. I'm like, frick, I'm a courier. I got a job. I'm making bank. I mean, for me, I was like, I had stacks of $100 bills because it was like, shoot, I lived in a closet underneath some steps and watched TV.
Jeez.
So my rent was like 125 bucks a month. I rode my bike all day, every day. And I run into this guy, and his name's Kirk Bauer. And he was a Vietnam vet. He never told this story in his life, never told this. I'm going to tell it to you right now because he told it almost 40 years after he lost his leg on the Mekong Delta. And as he's telling the story, he's also inducting me in the Hall of Fame of Disabled Sports USA.
Wow.
And he's the one, he came up to me on the street and said, "Hey, I'm Kirk Bauer. Here's my background." He also signed the ADA, Americans with Disability Act, in I think '92 with President George Herbert Walker Bush. And he was just a really cool guy, and I admired the hell out of him. And Kurt Kurt just says, "Hey man, there's more to life than riding your bike around." I'm like, "What for?" "I'm playing rugby, riding my bike. I go to the bars once in a while, see a good show. Life is grand."
Yeah.
And but so Kurt, the story he told though was that he was shot in the Mekong Delta 40 years after he was hurt, or 40 years after he lost his leg. He told the story, and he told it the night I'm standing next to him on a stage.
Wow.
And he said, 100 of us in 1968 got off the helicopters, dropped us off in the Mekong Delta. By the time 3 days later, there was 10 of us left. He had a friend of his and one of his comrades shot multiple times, and he pulled his bayonet because he's out of ammo. He's got the blood of his brother, and Kurt took probably four or 5 minutes just to tell that beginning part, dripping in his mouth.
Wow.
And Kurt said, and he said, "I'm going to make a promise to you." And he looked up to the sky, and he says, "If I get out of this, I'm going to spend the rest of my life helping people." And he hears the moving in, the enemy, and he thinks he's dead, and he makes that prayer. And then he has his bayonet on his chest, no ammunition. And then in the sky, he sees a helicopter come out. They threw all of them on the helicopter. He wakes up in Germany. His leg is gone. And 40 years later, he says, "I kept my promise. I hope I kept my promise." And that was the night he told the story, the night I got inducted to the Hall of Fame.
Wow.
And he's the guy that pulled me off the streets of Washington, D.C. and gave me a break. And the break was to be an intern at the Breckenridge Outdoor Education Center. And I imagine that institution will never forget me because I was a huge pain in the ass. But boy, I had some fun.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What a story,
Wow.
Holy
Yeah.
smokes. From death's door, to
Yes.
making this prayer and promise. And yeah, incredible.
And
And he's
keeping it though, but keeping it. So many people can make it's words are cheap, right? So
and he never said those words until 40 years later because he retired.
Yeah.
He retired. And he's still running around. I mean, he's a one of a kind human being. But if you say mentors and peers and people that you look up to, I admire in my one-armed life, I admired him. And then my two-armed life was my wrestling coach and stuff.
Yeah.
Because in my wrestling coach, because I was scared to death of him, and he made me understand consequences of behavior.
That's a good lesson. So
Yes.
you were scared to death of him, like if to wrestle, or you like literally scared to death of him?
He was just he could be a mean son of a bitch. And his name was Bob King. And last time I talked to him, he turned 80 like two years ago. And his daughter called me, and said, this is 40 years later, said, "Could you call Coach King? Because he talks about you all the time. No one else but you." And I'll just give you a quick side story. I call him and I said, "Coach King, this is Willie Stewart." And he's a Southern boy. And he goes, "Willie Stewart." And he said my name times. He said, "You just loved going to school. You loved school. You just didn't like going to class." So I'd have to say I spent my freshman, sophomore, and part of my junior years sitting in the locker room and not allowed to move out from the front of my locker, just hanging out in the locker room because he wouldn't let me come to practice. But that's all I had going to practice. I'm like, all I had in my life that I loved at that time was pure wrestling. That was it.
Wow.
That's wild.
All right. So now you're in Jesus. I don't even know where to go here. Okay. So you're in Colorado. You're skiing. You're teaching adaptive skiing, and now you're getting into the cross country skiing, right?
Yeah. So it's a long, complicated how it goes. But I've been skiing. I jump in races, and I weigh. At this point, I weigh about 200 pounds. 190 to 210. That's where I fluctuate because I was playing rugby too.
Okay.
And when you're alpine skiing, you just get a huge ass, big legs. And as an adaptive instructor, you're carrying people around all day and you're pushing and pulling. Believe me, I love teaching skiing and I love working with my fellow brothers and sisters with disabilities. And I love saying, man, there's hope at the end of this rainbow. You just have to believe, show courage, have to believe, show courage, have to believe. And, and just take a beating, and that beating is going to make you like a sword. You know, you're going to be hardened. And so I'm doing all this. I'm racing, and one of the coaches of the U.S. ski team was out at the Nordic Center, and he to it now is inducted in the Hall of Fame and stuff. And he says, "Why don't you go to a summer camp and take a test?" And so I went down there, and I think I was in you guys know how this is when you're in, 200 plus. I took the VO2 max test. I think it was like a 57 something. It was good for a rugby player. And the guy says, "You know what? I don't really want to talk to you that much, but here's your training plan. Come back in 1 year." And that was right after I ran a 340 marathon. And I thought these guys were just full of shit. And they were all a bunch of Weasley little Nordic cross country, spindly little wimps. I hope they all.
Yeah, Willie, don't sugarcoat it. Just say it straight.
Like there's Justin Wadsworth, Ben Hughesby, Carl Swinson. These guys are all badasses of cycling too, because you know who Carl is.
Yeah.
And I was just like, you big bunch of wussies running around your Lycra and all of this. So I think the guy's no good for crap. And his wife is a 3-time Olympian. He goes, "You need to do this, this, and this." And the guy didn't like me. And I actually didn't like him. To this day, I think he enjoys me and I enjoyed him, but he's like a normal person and I'm a freak. So, and I go down there and I take that training they give you, and then you have to hit your training goals, and you have to hit your 500 hours and your 800 hours, 1,200 hours. And you know how it is. You hit 2,000 hours and you're putting in your 30-hour weeks. You're going to be good at whatever you want to do, and then you're going to cross country ski on some of the hardest courses in the world. And remember at Soldier Hollow in 2002, I hit 51 in a training run there on skinny skis. 51.
Wow.
I mean, that's just how. It's not like a little wussy sport. It's the most brutal, and you got to be tough as nails and be able to take a beating. It's a lot like wrestling. You just get crushed more than you win. But when you win, it's delightful, but it doesn't mean you have to show up every day for that sport year round. And so anyhow, I did. And I did what they said for a year, and I jumped in a marathon that next year, and I ran a 2:43 at the Marine Corps Marathon, our 2:52. Then I went 2:48, and then I just kept dropping down. And then I went back, and I wasn't a runner. I was a ski racer. I never ran. Yeah. And I always thought that a good training day was 5 hours. So you do a warm-up run, go to the marathon, and then warm down, and you got your 5 hours. And I'm like, because I don't want to go run. Who wants to go run 5 hours?
Yeah.
So that's what I was doing all the time. And then I went back and I kept taking the test, and you had to improve every year. Even if you didn't get on the podium, as long as you were getting better, you had a hope of being on the D team, development, and then C, B, A. And then your funding came as you climbed the ladder. And I really didn't care about climbing the ladder. I just cared about like the perks. I was all about, where are you guys going this year? Where's the World Cup? And they would say Austria. And I go, oh, well, I'm going to get in shape.
Yeah. Well, I love that you say I'm not a runner as you're running a 2:40 marathon. I mean,
well, that towards the end, and that's when that was on the way into. So I'd already been at this now for 10 years, and I got on the podium, I think once in France, a biathlon I did in Beitostølen in Norway, and then I felt like I had one shot, and that was a 5K race. So I worked on speed. My 5K times were pretty good for a skier, and I trained with really good people, and most of them were the women in the U.S. ski team, because my coach coached 3 of the women on the team. And, I got pretty good, and I uncorked one race in my whole career of a decade plus, and it happened to be at the right time. And if you go into my background, you'll see that I won when everyone quit. But a really tough day. And I lucked out, and I had great coaches, and they put some great skis on. And then it was a relay. It was and my relay teammates were better than I was, but I had a great race on that day. And so we won, we've lost to Russia by 1.2 seconds or something. And we were supposed to probably finish 10th, and we got a silver medal. And that was the highlight of my ski career.
Awesome.
One day in 10 years. That was it.
Well, and I love the story because when we opened the podcast, we were talking about resilience, and you're saying that, you know, when everybody quits, that's when you have a shot, and that speaks to that resilience, you know. And I do feel like a lot of endurance athletes, at least the ones that are successful, I think they find that as it gets harder, they're going to do better. Whereas, you know, some endurance athletes kind of fall off as it gets harder. But then there's, it's a mindset that you have where, hey, this is sucking for everybody, but I'm kind of into it. I'm gonna make the most of it. You know, I think, yeah, there's like a switch that some people have that gives you that ability to, no matter how bad it gets, you're just gonna keep pushing hard, and others will fall off. Not like you're running or you're racing faster necessarily, but you're just not dropping off like they are. I've encountered a little bit of that myself at some of these longer gravel races that I do, where you just see like somebody's a faster rider, but then they end up dropping off because it just, maybe it's raining, or it's just miserable, or it's too long or too much climbing or whatever. I don't know. I feel like there's a switch, you know, some people have it, and I think it's probably inside everybody. It's just, how bad do you want it? Like Matt would say.
Yeah, I think we're all capable. Everybody's capable of, and I think I lucked out because I took a path that created way more opportunities. It's like Michael Marks with the Belgian waffle rides.
Uh-huh.
You know, Michael called, says, "Hey, can you come out and do a ride?" You know, I'm like, "Yeah, sure." You know, I had no idea what the Belgian waffle ride was because it was new, and there really wasn't these gravel things going on at the time.
Yeah.
And you know, I went out there and I humiliated myself. I mean, I was awful, but then I came back a year later because I understood the game of the gravel scene and all that. And, you know, I am 4 or 5 of those in a row. So it was just strategy. You know, no one told me. I didn't have a team I was riding with, but I picked out who the team was I could ride with, and I just sucked wheel for 8 hours.
Yeah.
But no, I just want to be clear about something. When you were doing this, the cross country skiing, if you will, the Nordic skiing, and running these marathons, you were running. This wasn't, and I hope this doesn't come out. This wasn't in the adaptive category. You're in the main field. Is that correct? Am I?
And like Kona and Ironman, World Championships of Duathlon, World Championships ITU Triathlon, all the marathons, all of that. I'm able-bodied, you know, so every race. But in the U.S. ski team, and in that year, in 1992, when I went on the ski team and then stayed on it till 2002, that was the U.S. disabled ski team, U.S. ski team were partners.
Okay.
And then now it's the U.S. Paralympic team. And so that's why I saw so many of the able-bodied athletes, and we'd be at camps in Yellowstone, wherever, and then we'd have wrestling matches, and that was just fun as hell, beating up people. It was great.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the amazing thing is, when you started, if I remember correctly from the book, when you really started riding and competing, I think it may have even been your first triathlon, but at that point you didn't have all the adaptive mechanisms, right? I mean,
no, not. It was kind of funny. I did Kona with one hand, and I did fine. But I know, I don't know if you're familiar with all the Xterra races and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I came across the finish line at Kona, and I had a pretty good race. I think I was around 10 hours 50. Just a second. Hang on. What happened here? How does it say hold and accept or end and accept? Oh no.
Oh, I don't know.
My wife is calling, which she's got to understand that I can't send Send a voicemail. I got it. There you go. So
Are you going to get in trouble for that? Are you going to get in trouble later for that?
I've been married for 30 years and I've been in trouble almost every day.
All right. So,
So we're solid.
We're all brothers in that.
Yeah. Kind of interesting. So I come through the finish line at Kona, and you have the great announcers going, ladies and gentlemen, One Arm Willie. And that's kind of when I became One Arm Willie. At the end of it, the guy who owned and created Xterra, I'm screwing it up, but he came over to me after the race and said, hey, Willie, will you come do Xterra? And I go, yeah, I got to get an arm to do that. I need a mountain bike and blah, blah. And he gave me a mountain bike and a road bike at the finish line.
No
kidding. And then the next year I did Xterra. I did Kona, Xterra back to back. So
Wow.
1 week Kona, week Xterra. And back then, I've been beat up and I have lots of injuries, but I'm still solid. I can still get out there. And Xterra, though, was a transformative race because I had a prosthetic. It was crazy. I mean, the prosthetic was like, whoa, this is a game changer. And a lot of people don't know who Rudy Tolson Garcia is, but Rudy's a bilateral amputee little kid. And I was working at Loma Linda University Medical Center in the rehab, and Rudy was growing. So they had parts of his old legs hanging around, and he was missing his legs above his knee. And I took one of his skinny little legs and his little kneecap, and I made a part with my prosthetist, Mike Davidson, made a part out of his kneecap and his shin bone. And then we made a bike, just transferred a bike piece together. This is before anyone's doing this stuff. And then it worked. And I was like, oh my God, this is a game changer. It's like, this is cheating. If you can ride with two hands, this doesn't count. It was so joyful, though, to be able to ride a mountain bike, to be able to do the Belgian waffle rides, to be able to go to the Xterra World Championships and not be hindered by my bike riding at all. My descending now, like I said, I'm 62. I descended at Leadville last year 10 times better than I did in 2007. In 2007. Not even a game, not even comparison, just because the bikes have improved so much. My prosthetic has improved so much. And all that time too, that's when Challenge Athletes Foundation was created. And then that's what created this pool and network, and that all these athletes with disabilities that are getting after it can support the other athletes. And that's the power of the organizations I work for, is like, when your people can give back, that's when your people truly heal. And that was it. Hey, I have a dog chewing a bone, and I'm going to go grab it.
Do it. Yeah.
Let me know if you.
Yeah.
But giving back, and that arm, and it is, when I put a prosthetic arm, and I remember I went across the street with it, not knowing how it would work, and it was strapped on by a strap, and it's super dangerous. If you crash, you got hurt really bad. And I'm like, this thing is badass. I popped a wheelie. I could ride up rocks, descend. And this is all hardtail, no shocks and stuff like that.
Right.
Then I got a front suspension, and the next year I jumped in Leadville 100 too. So.
Well, I love that you described it as joyful, because I can't imagine, overcoming and riding with one hand, and how difficult that would be. And then, but still succeeding and pursuing it and putting in all the work that you need to put in to be good at it. And then all of a sudden, whoa, now I got this other arm over here, and now I have total control. Or maybe you had, I don't know, would you say you had total control with one arm? Did you get to that level? Right? I can't imagine.
I would enter, I'd enter at that point Eco Challenge and a lot of the adventure races, and I was kayaking with crap. But from that point of, I would enter these races, 5-day races, with one hand, and I carried my bike more than I rode it, because it was so dangerous.
Yeah.
But I wanted so much to be able to not fail. But then I show up later, but I have to carry my arm like like you would carry your arrows in the back.
Okay.
And I carry it around and want to throw it on and ride. And it was just nice. I'm not kidding. This, like, that arm made from parts ended up being like one of the great change moments of my life. It was like the clouds opened up and I'm like, wow, I'm actually pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is a kind of a recurring theme with you where you take these things that would be considered disadvantages and then you end up turning them into these great advantages, because all of the work with one arm, as sloppy and as crazy and wild as it was, and then you get this other arm and all of a sudden it's like, now you're better than you get ever probably dreamed, because of all the work you put in.
This is I have all these stories are funny, but so I used to canoe and do some, whitewater downriver canoeing. I had a partner, his name was Gene Gamber. And
yeah, hold on. Let's just get this out. How the fuck did you paddle the Grand Canyon in a kayak?
Well, this is
why would you even think that this? Go ahead.
I'm paddling down these rivers and I put the shaft of the paddle on my stump and I would snap it. Boom. And then on this side, if I went over to my right, I'd put the paddle up here and then pull with my, it's all your core. So you're not really using your arms when you paddle.
Yeah. Okay.
But I was terrible. And I had a good guy in the back, my pilot. And, he would just tell me what to do. All I was an engine. Doosh, doosh, doosh. And we'd go through these whitewater things down the Colorado River. And I was all proud of myself. I would run class 3 rapids, even 4 rapids in a canoe.
Oh, yeah.
Then my buddy gets a permit for the Grand Canyon. And he goes, hey, you're invited to the Grand. You just sit in a raft. And I go, bullshit. I'm not going to sit. So I went back to that prosthetic guy, Mike Davidson at Loma Linda. And I said, dude, give me something I can figure out how to kayak with. And it didn't work. It failed. And I sat in a swimming pool probably for 4 months every morning at 4 a.m. because I had the keys to the pool. And I'd go out there, practice rolling. I could not get a roll with the prosthetic. I couldn't figure it out. And if you see, I put the paddle down. The paddle has to be level with your ass when you're upside down to hit a roll. And then it's all this timing and feeling of the white water. Remember, the Grand Canyon was 30,000 square feet. It was thumping. Yeah. And I put another guy found a piece of webbing, a shoestring. He says, you have to be able to articulate, move the paddle around. He put the shoestring around the paddle at the side of the pool, and he was a kayaker too. And he goes, try that. Boom, hit a roll. Boom, hit a roll. Rolled 5 times in a row. Boom, 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 boom. And I'm like, Grand Canyon, here I come. And just a real quick story. So I go in the Grand Canyon, and I'm like, I'm killing it. And I've been on some pretty big rivers at this point, but I'm killing it. And I go, what's the name of this rapid? And they go, this isn't a rapid. And I'm like catching like 16-foot faces, dropping off, hitting this wave train. I'm killing it. I go, the rapid, and you can't hear anything. The rapid's up there. And I'm like, what are you talking about? This is huge. No, the rapid's up there. So I go over, and it's the first rapid in the Grand Canyon, and I'm in there for 21 days. There's my birds. 21 days, and I see this rapid. It's called Badger, and I go over the top, and I've never seen anything like this in my life. It's like Jaws crushing you. And I roll upside down, and I've got shorts on, shoes, and my pants rip off my body, so now I'm naked, and I'm rolling in this over and over, just laundromat, over and over, not rolling on purpose, just getting killed.
Yeah.
I spit out, I throw my paddle into the cockpit, I swim to shore, I come to, and it wasn't even a big rapid for the Grand Canyon. And they go, we're camping here. And I'm like, man, I'm fucked. I am fucked. And that was day 1. But by the end, big, huge rapids called lava, and I got my ass handed to me every single day, but I never quit. And you know what? The cool thing about the Grand Canyon, you can't get out if you quit.
That's the cool thing.
Got to keep going. Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah.
This is apropos of nothing, but at any point in 30 years, did your wife say, don't do it?
Oh, she regularly calls me an idiot though.
Yeah.
But here, man.
Yeah.
But in the
Yeah.
Grand Canyon, so I got out of the Grand Canyon and went straight to Kona, 2 or 3 weeks later, and I'd run up the sides of the Grand Canyon, all the trail systems there
Mhm.
to get my training. And that was just like from the Grand Canyon to Kona, Hawaii for the Ironman World Championships.
Jeez.
Yeah. Wow. You know, I'm listening to that story thinking, yeah, no way. Your
Yeah.
pants got ripped off from the water and you're flopping around like a lawn. I mean, I have no interest in that.
Let me tell you, the Grand Canyon is really cold water.
Uh-huh.
It was just, you know how sometimes you do stupid things in life, and in the morning you wake up and you have to go do a walk of shame. It was like a little swim of shame coming to the shore, standing there like with my pants off, lost my stupid shoes, my booties.
All right. Well, hey, I'm curious. So, you now with a rugby background, you were saying you were like a 210. Obviously for an endurance athlete. And you mentioned in wrestling you were down to 150, 160. So it seems like your weight's kind of fluctuated quite a bit. Where has that stabilized? And what are you what would you consider your fighting weight if you're going to do an event?
It's 160, and I probably weigh close to 175, 180 right now.
Okay.
And then, when I 60, which I can still pull, like I have a 50-mile race January 6th, running race, and I'm
Okay.
heavy, but it's not A stuff. It's just stuff to do to get to the A stuff. And if you can't do the D stuff, A doesn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then when I can lose weight. And if I ride, like if I go to Leadville and I go light, I'm pretty decent, competitively, for an old guy. And
Yeah.
I love when you ride and you're light and lean and you feel good, the results show.
Yeah.
But if you go in there heavy to any race, I mean,
Yeah.
you're a heavy racer, and heavy racers don't do so well. They can finish, but
Yep.
you're not gonna, it's gonna be a hard day. And I just don't like having those long, hard races because I'm out of shape.
Yeah. So what is your do you have like an off season, and do you have like a real kind of regimented program that you use, or is it more like, okay, well, I'm going to do this event in February. I need to get my shit together. I need to clean up my diet. I need to get hard into the gym or whatever it is. Or are you more like a consistent?
Now I call it fat season. So I go into, I think in the fall, after November 1, I tend not to have events. October has a couple events.
Yeah.
And then, and I have that 50 miler coming up January 6th. And so that's just an over distance training day. It's going to take me 10 to 12 hours.
Yeah.
And then I'll work way in because I do ski races too, but I'm heavy on all of those Nordic ski races. And then I'll work my way through that part of the season, maybe to half Ironman California, escape from Alcatraz. And by June, I'm leaning. And by August, I'm peaking. So that's what I'm leaning, putting my hours in, increasing my volume, then I drop my volume, increase my intensity, and I hope I can. And for me, uncorking a race is it's me. It's no one else. It's my race.
Yeah.
And I want to be satisfied with my commitment to it. And then when I don't commit strongly, I mean, we all know what the results will be.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's in a roundabout way, it's way, way harder now in my 60s than it was as a kid.
Yeah.
But I watch what I eat. I can't go, like I went to watch the football games over at a restaurant here. It was really fun.
Yeah.
But I better not do that.
Yeah. Too tempting.
Yeah, I think my walk around weight is probably 180.
All right. So during let's quote unquote fat season, are you doing workouts at all, or is it just like a complete time off?
No, I keep it. I use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm a level 1, level 2, probably long, slow distance person. I'm a big into not getting hurt. And
Yeah.
anytime if you don't get hurt, you can actually put more volume in. Also, as you get older, you loosen up on the volume, but increase a little bit more intensity. But still, intensity can hurt you, and
Mhm.
so I watch out for that. And then and you know how it is. If you don't put time in your saddle,
Yeah.
you pay a price on that too.
Big time.
So you always have to sit down. I'll sit on a trainer. I'll watch a movie, which I love movies, and I'll watch a whole movie and just pedal.
Yeah.
You know, I have a problem sitting on a trainer for 3 hours, and I don't find it that boring in the age of the way the trainers are now and
Oh,
Netflix.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. I do a lot of Zwift when it gets cold, or rainy or whatever. I used to be a year-round cyclist, but you have these near misses in the rain, and it's just like, what am I doing out here? At one point, like I felt like psychologically I would use it as an advantage. Like, hey, I'm out here and no one else is. You got to be who's putting in work right like this right now. It was like a competitive advantage in your head, but yeah, it gets flat out dangerous. And like you say, with the Zwift and the power, the trainers now, and yeah, I got into where I'd split screen. I'd watch a movie and I'd watch my Zwift at the same time, and yeah, that was a good way to train. Or
Yeah,
you can get into an audio book or something and just kind of just put the work in while you're.
I have a road here, even though it's frozen and stuff, but it's a dirt road, and I can ride up to almost 7,000, 6,500 feet, and it's basically 16 miles up a road from I'd say 4% grade up to 16% grade.
Man,
And you're just
perfect.
pedaling. You're
Yeah.
just pedaling, and then you bundle up on the descent.
Yeah.
Where,
Yeah, but
where are you calling in from? So where is this road? Where are you right now?
the road is probably less than a quarter of a mile from my house, and I'm in Boise, Idaho. Like Boise's right on the edge of the wilderness. So
Yeah.
and in the wilderness, like I do this race, and you can look it up later, but I did this one called Smoke and Fire 400, 420. But I can ride from my back door basically on dirt to Canada if I wanted to. But you ride over to Sun Valley, come around through McCall, come back down. It's 400 miles later on dirt. You
Wow.
come back and you have 5 days to finish it.
Wow. Wow.
Oh,
And it's
awesome.
self-support.
Do you have a
Yeah,
particular focus? I mean, he's mentioned Escape from Alcatraz, so that's swimming and running and biking. But do you have a preference over for running versus riding versus swimming versus skiing? If you
I
could,
think like this year, like my biggest focus, like it's always Leadville. I put that in, but I've done Rebecca's Private Idaho, and because I love Rebecca,
Yeah.
and this, I think what I'm going to do is in March, at the end of March, is the Grand Traverse from Crested Butte to Aspen.
Whoa.
So ski mountaineer, ski mow over the top, and then you go, and then a few months later you come back, and then you bike it or run it, then bike it. So it's a called the I don't know, whatever, something Triple Crown of that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But my teammate on that, well, not my teammate this year, but we're doing it together. I have a kid named Lucas Onan. He's got his arm, he has a brachial plexus injury on his arm. And then my other guy that we're doing it with is Dave Mackey, who's an incredible endurance athlete. They're both unreal, better than I am. And then my teammate is he's a buddy of mine that I've raced with for easily 25, 30 years. So you do the ski race because you need someone to basically call the rescue if you get knocked out.
Yeah.
And the Triple Crown is the bike and run. And then I also sign up for Leadville every year. But I don't have any. I like the scene of racing. I do like the scene. I respect the good guys. That's not me. I thought it was awesome. I'm getting ready to go up Columbine, but I've had already a flat, and I've had 2 mechanicals going up Leadville, and then I'm at the base getting ready to go up, and here comes all the leaders, and I'm like, a good race for me is 9 something, and these
Yeah.
guys now they're going sub 6.
Right. Yeah. Holy smokes. Yeah.
Crazy.
So let's talk about the your association with the Challenge Athlete Foundation. So when did that first start for you?
You know, this is funny because this is the 30-year anniversary of it.
Yeah.
But there was there's like Scott Tinley, Bob Babbitt, well-known kind of, Bob is just a funny dude, but connected in the endurance industry and sports and triathlon. He's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Jeffrey, Rick Kozlowski, he was a swimmer at USC. And also these guys all are accomplished triathletes too. And I admired those guys when I was a kid. And I had a contract. I was working with Craig Rehab out of Boulder, and they would bring up some people, and they would either go to Winter Park, they could come up to Breckenridge, because there's a lot of adaptive ski schools in Colorado. And this guy comes in the office, and he's missing his leg below the knee. And they go, "This is Jim McLaren." And Jim also was a quadriplegic. And I'm like, "Wow, you got hit by a car during a triathlon in Orange County, California." He goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Wow, so you lost your leg and became a quad?" He goes, "No, I lost my leg years before." And I said, "What?" And I think in the 1980s, lost his leg. And he was a football All-American and lacrosse player from Yale. Super smart, handsome, charismatic guy. And he starts telling me his stories of Ironman and everything. I'm like, "God, I wish I could do Ironman." And because I didn't swim at the time, but I kayaked and paddle. I can swim in white water. I know how to swim in white water, which is just survival, not dying.
Yeah.
Right.
And he called me a wuss, and he says anyone can do it. And so the guy, a quadriplegic, who they started Challenge Athletes Foundation for. This is before there was Challenge Athletes Foundation. He's the one that encouraged me to come down to San Diego, and it's called the San Diego Tri Challenge. Before it was called CAF, Challenge Athletes Foundation. And it was for Jim. And they raised money and bought him a van so he could be more independent. And I see CAF as a different organization than a lot of other people do, but I see it was an organization that was based on respect for people where they stood. Here's where you are in your life. We care about you. We want you back in the game. We feel you can do it. Rest is up to you. And I'm like, that's all I ever wanted to hear. I didn't want people playing a violin, feeling sympathy. And they help people with equipment that they otherwise wouldn't have. And they've spent money, and they spent over 30 years. They spent quite a amount of money on me. But the biggest thing is that they got all these people that didn't believe in themselves back in the game. And now all those people are in that network for 30 years. And that network, if you get newly injured today, you hit a button and you see someone just like you, killing it. It just makes you think differently about you and the healing process. That's what Challenge Athletes Foundation told people, that you're good. You're not broken. You're not broken down. You're not disabled. You're good. You're as good as you want to be. And just real quick sidebar, I was skiing on the lift last year up at Bogus Basin, which is my local ski hill, which I can look out my window and see.
Oh, nice.
One of my friends, Derek Nelson, who is a pro skier, he's a mountain biker, unreal. He gets hurt. They call a helicopter in. He's up there for like 3 hours, agony and pain. He had his hip torn out of the socket, and he has paralysis from the knee down, and it's kind of like a drop foot. And this was a year ago, not even a year. Yeah. He just signed Leadville 100 with Challenge Athletes Foundation, and he's going to take it on. And he would have probably never done Leadville because he called it, that's just a road bike. It's like, it's just a road bike if you think. Go out there and go fast. Go do sub-6 and then tell me what it's like.
Yeah.
But anyway, Nelson, who's a great human being, great person, he saw slots for Leadville with Challenge Athletes Foundation. He jumped in it. And then we have slots for Escape from Alcatraz. We have slots that we do things with Kona. And, that was my deal. It's like, hey, you want to do Kona? And I said, yes. And it's like, go do your qualifier. I went down to Brazil, did my qualifier, made my time, went to Kona, raced with everybody. On your mark, get set, go. There was no disabled division. It was just all of us racing together. I
Right.
love that. That's the stuff I love. All of us racing together. That category, even the Paralympics, I don't like being isolated. I like being with everyone. And Paralympians tend to get trapped in that isolation of like, hey, I've got to do well at this. And it's like, you are doing well at this and you are a badass. But doing well with everyone just feels a lot better to me than doing well myself.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And you guys get this. I mean, you don't do gravel racing unless you like people,
Right. Yeah.
Gravel racing is a scene, but it's a great scene. And I like the inclusivity of it, and I like the broad thinking of it. And is it my best racing? No way.
Mm-hmm.
But I love it. I love it.
Well, when you say you have at the Challenge Athletes Foundation, you have slots. So is it the kind of thing where, let's say for Alcatraz, and there's slots available for Alcatraz. So we got athletes, one in Florida, one in New York, one in, Boise. And we're gonna go do Alcatraz. Do you guys do all the Challenge athletes kind of have do they stay together? Do they, when they get to Alcatraz, is there like a base camp, or is it just more like, hey, we're going to help you get there, but you're on your own? How does that work?
There's like the oldest finisher at Alcatraz this year in his 80s did it. He lost his leg, did Alcatraz.
Wow.
And he won the age group. I would think it's 75 and up. 80 years old.
Incredible.
Like a guy. But I mean, tell me how badass that is. The guys, anyone who takes on Alcatraz is gutsy because I don't care, able-bodied or disabled, that race can go bad in a second. And I think I'm at my 25 times of doing it.
Wow.
Like, how stupid is that? But we get slots allocated, through Challenge Athletes Foundation, and we do fundraising with those slots. But we also build a network with those slots. And then we have our athletes, and any athlete, if an athlete wants a slot, they're in. You got to do the training. You got to get on the boat, get off the boat, and we'll figure it all out. And Alcatraz is not truly accessible. I've seen some high-level amputees like Sarah Reinertsen, a couple guys a guy out of Argentina, on one leg and crutches do it. That guy was good. Muhammad La. There's great athletes that have done Alcatraz, and they're good. I mean, I think my fastest time there was 2:20. I swam probably at 24, across. My slowest time there is probably 4 hours, and I swam a 1:07.
Wow.
So it's, and I was young when I did a 2:20, but I mean, that put me in the top of my age group and all that stuff too. Right. So I'm full body.
Yeah.
You coming out to do Alcatraz this year?
Oh yeah. Yeah, dude.
Oh, we got to, let's go out there, Dave.
We're going to come out and root you on then. That's our turf.
Yeah.
You guys went, it's pretty cool. So Robin Williams, used to live right on the course.
Yeah.
And Robin would come over every year and hang out with the Challenge Athletes Foundation and our people. And Robin, I can't tell you how many times Robin's come up to me in transition. You can't tell it's Robin Williams. He goes, hey, Will, it's Robin. But he was another guy. Rudy Tolson Garcia. Rudy and Robin helped put Challenge Athletes Foundation on the map. And then I know Challenge Athletes Foundation has raised about $160 million. I doubt any of them realize, I think they are now in the 30th year, but how they've transformed how society thinks. I think a lot of people don't believe that, but perceptions are hard to change.
Yeah.
And when we're able-bodied with 2 arms, 2 legs, or not in a wheelchair, our perception is we're broke. And so CAF's saying you're different.
Yeah.
But you certainly ain't broke. And those are the things I think are super powerful. And we need more voices saying that. And then we need more athletes showing that. And those athletes are, every time an athlete, no matter what the injury is, takes on a goal that is outside the realm or perception of society, those athletes have ability to transform the way people think because the people saw you do it. But if you don't show up on a rugby field, then no one thinks that you can do it. And when you show up on that rugby field, kick some effing ass. And that's exactly I went. And I had a huge, angry chip on my shoulder. And I'll tell you, you get an athlete with an angry chip on their shoulder and people are telling you can't, they will go out there and cut. They will just literally wipe out the other team if they possibly could. And I fed on that. Every week I wanted to be the strongest, meanest, toughest player on every rugby field I stepped on. And then I went and became an endurance athlete. I stepped on the rugby field and got my ass handed to me.
Well,
there you go.
You're some spindly little endurance athlete now. You know, you don't have a chance with them big boys out there.
You little pussy. You spandex wearing pussy.
I love that. I became those guys. I was like, wow. I had no idea how tough those people were. You know, and you know who was one of our sponsors when we were really young was Davis Finney with Pearl Zuni.
Oh, nice.
Davis came on early and helped out our team. And you know, Davis became a really good Nordic skier. I think at U.S. Nationals in Anchorage, Alaska, I know he finished maybe the top 3 in the 50K, maybe. Before he almost made the team as a Nordic skier.
Yeah.
Just because he was freaking tough. So tough.
Well,
one thing I wanted to say, because I think it brings up a point that you said before, you know, changing people's perception. But I think you electing our athletes to compete in the able body categories, if you will, and I'm using the word, that really has got to have an amazing impact, because if it is only, and I don't want to dissuade anyone from doing, but if it's always in the para category, then it'd probably just be perceived, oh, that person's a badass in the para category, right? But by putting him in with the, if you will, with the able body, and then going and finishing, for God's sake, but then winning or placing higher than others, what an amazing impact that has.
And you know, in triathlon and Nordic skiing, like you'll see some of the U.S. Paralympians, you know, jump into some of the Nordic ski races. Those guys are good. You know, the Olympians will win some of those races too. But some of the para athletes, I mean, they're finishing. I mean, I think it was Brian McKeever out of Canada won a Paralympic gold, visually impaired, and then he went on and made the Olympic team. You know, and he almost won a medal in the Olympics too. But I mean, there's that quality level, high level athlete. And then the Paralympics is really important too, because there isn't access and opportunity in other races. But race courses could make things more accessible, and then, you know, let it be known. And you can always, like Rebecca's Private Idaho ran the 104-mile race and just took out a little loop, but left that option in, you know, 104 miles. But, you know, a guy doing it on a hand cycle, 104 miles out there, he did it. Josh Sweeney, he did it. That's pretty badass to me. He was big at that pace. I mean, Josh Sweeney, I look at him and I go, what's the message he's sending? You're in Rebecca's Private Idaho in the middle of nowhere, and Josh Sweeney's on the hand cycle getting it. And, you know, Josh Sweeney, let me just tell you, that sucker, I would never cross him. He's just a big, brawny badass that isn't scared. And you look at Carlos Melito, those guys that jumped into Ironman the first time in hand cycles. And, you know, the first few guys didn't make the cutoffs. And now those guys are so wicked fast.
Yeah.
Remember that first cutoff is I think it's a little over 8 hours to make the swim bike combination, and a hand cycle, hard to do, but those guys do it all the time now. And there's athletes everywhere now that are so much better than I ever was. And I love it. I love it. I'm connected to it. I feel like we do have that brotherhood, sisterhood. And
I'm sure on some level they're looking back and saying you blazed a trail, right? So I mean, you say they're better than you, but many of them may not be there unless you had set that kind of bar.
You're taking leg parts and making it work on your arm with a bike.
Yeah, but, you know, and guys, tell me what this would have been like had I not met that guy Kurt Bauer, the Vietnam vet.
Yeah.
That was all Vietnam vets that were my role models. You know, these are all guys that in this war that everyone said this or that about. These are some of the toughest, badass, you know, makes you want to cry when, you know, that served our country.
Yeah.
And Kirk Bauer served me. He, you know, he was a man of service and his service benefited me. And so when I think about that, it's like, what's my service, you know? And
Yeah.
so, and my hope is that I end up more like Kirk Bauer. So that's my goal. You can't do jack if you don't show up at the starting line.
Yeah.
Now, you know, and
the crazy thing is if I got that about it, so like the, you know, the winds of change, right? Your meeting of Kurt Bauer was kind of accidental, right? He came up to you on the street, right? Is that how you phrased it?
He was an attorney, and another attorney told him about a bike rider in the city, and so he sought me out. So.
Wow.
And then, you know, the rugby thing, the rugby thing is that's why it all comes back to the rugby thing, and that's why it's in that book.
Mm-hmm.
But none of this doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's not all Willie. I mean, I had a friend of mine said, "Hey man, let's go play Almost Heaven West Virginia Sevens rugby tournament." You know, his name was Kenny Thring. If he didn't say that to me, I wouldn't have thought that. He goes, "You believe I can do that?" He goes, "Dude, I've seen you catch. I've seen you run. You're fit."
Yeah.
I was MVP of the first tournament I was in, not because I had one arm, because I just lit it up.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then that's like, and you guys talk, there's the Born to Run aspect of things I've done. And I'm in that there's a little tiny line of a one-armed guy with a cottage cheese cup on his head, which is really,
yeah.
Born to Run, I just happened to be in Hawaii for the ITU World Championships, not sprint, but Olympic distance triathlon. I had a good race. And a guy took me out and said, "Hey, what do you think of this course?" And I ran part of the Hurt 100, which was all mud and swamp, and I go, "This is awesome." And he goes, "Do you want to think you could do this race?" I go, "When's the race?" And he goes, "Well, there's a short race on Saturday, but you have the IT race on Sunday." And I said, "Well, let me jump in the short race and see what it's like." It was a 15 miler. So I did that race and I won the race at Hurt. Wow. And then they invited me to do the Hurt 100. And I did that Hurt 100, but it all unraveled around mile 84. And at that point, I had my shorts around my head and I was doing my naked run thing. Because I had so much chafing, I looked like a baboon and
oh man.
Yeah. I didn't finish, but I figured, I never ran past 26 miles in my life, but I went back the next 2 years, I finished it. But that Hurt 100 was something else. I would have never jumped in that. Who the hell would? It's like consider, but it turned out to be one of the things that really transformed the way I thought about what I could and could not do. And doing things in the woods maybe aren't the best because no one sees you. And Hurt 100 was really difficult because there is spots where there's ropes and mud and all that stuff. But I mean, all of this conversation we've been having for however long we're chatting is just sticking your nose out there and sometimes getting your head knocked off, but get up, get up and get. And I think you all know it, and most athletes know it. It's just a matter of a lot of the para athletes, the only opportunity they have to stick their nose out there is in the para categories. But I think we, as a society, will be more empowered the more access is created with the para athletes. The more access there is, the more we can actually truly be like uplifted by the power of others. And so the more people that are different from ourselves will make us better. And that's sports. That's sports in its finest. Is someone overcoming obstacles to compete, to show up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So we have a guest next week who's in a similar lane, right, as the Challenge Athletes Foundation. Their organization is called Ride for Racial Justice. And so the reason why I was asking about this base camp, like the Escape from Alcatraz, if you guys actually all get together, one of our previous guests, Macasey Duncan, who he goes by Dad Bod Cycling on Instagram, but he's doing great things. This guy Macasey's giving away bikes to underprivileged kids, and he's a force. And we found out about Ride for Racial Justice through Macasey, and he did his. He was able to do his first ever gravel event, the SPT Gravel, this past year, and he went with the Ride for Racial Justice. And the way you were describing the Challenge Athletes Foundation, where there's slots, I think that they have a similar template, because he got one of those slots, and then he had to train, had to put the work in. They provided the bike. He got to the venue, and he was with the group, and then he went out and had this amazing experience. And now he's gonna, he was one of the last finish. I shouldn't say last, but he ended near the back of the heap, and so now he's really motivated, and he's going to go back next year and really showcase what he can do. Much like some of the events you've done, where you got to have that realization of like, oh my God, this is insane, or you need to adjust your mindset and your training to really compete, like kind of like we were describing with Belgian Waffle and some of these other events that you've done. But I think, to your point about showing up and showing people, and that's it's so powerful. And fortunately today, like you early in the podcast, you mentioned the internet. If someone is injured and they suffer something like losing a limb, you can find badass representations like yourself, like, hey, this doesn't have to be a big pity party here. I need to just get myself up and get out there and go. And there's an organization that can help me do that. I think it's super important what you've done, and then with the Challenge Athlete Foundation, what they're providing to the community. It's really it's a great aspect of humanity.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead.
props to the event people that are actually allocating and making these slots to them, and then props to what you just said is huge. If I heard you right, like Rebecca's Private Idaho, they've got a course, but the simple modification to that course makes it able for anyone to do it. A simple change, and now it's open to everybody versus, so I think props to these organizations. Props to anyone that's actually recognizing that it just takes a little bit, allocate some slots, let people come, make a minor change to the event, and then everyone's in.
Yeah, there's a young lady that is a gravel. She's just a badass, Meg Fisher. I don't know if you guys ever heard of Meg. Mm-hmm. Meg, I think, is probably instrumental, and she's missing her leg below the knee. She was instrumental, I think, in creating these categories, these para divisions in gravel. I mean, she's a force, and she's a great athlete, but a great person. And so, she's transformed lives by creating access. And who in the world doesn't want a more accessible society? I don't want that.
Yeah, right. Come on. Yeah. All right. Hey, listen, before we let you go, we really appreciate your time here. Can you talk about, you do speaking engagements for the Challenge Athletes Foundations, and can you talk about how that came about, and how frequent is that, and how long have you been doing it?
And do they allow you to tell that sexual story in the beginning, or you can't?
Everybody needs a sexual failure story.
Yeah, we've all had them.
Exactly. Yeah. I think Challenge Athletes Foundation, I think what they have, I love them, and I think they love me. But I'm never satisfied for how much we do. We can never do enough. And that's hard. And no matter how good you are, you still can't do enough. And sure, they give me the mic now and then. Like at Alcatraz, we do dinners and places with our groups getting together. I love the sporting events because it does bring our athletes together, but also our donors. And Challenge Athletes Foundation's donor pool, I mean, it's pretty outrageous how cool and good the donors are to CAF. Like, they're people that actually have had their lives transformed by being part of our lives.
Yeah.
And it might be some of the best people in the United States or in the world that have been around, because it's such a positive vibe with all of that. And I mean, I speak here and there, I jump in once in a while. It's hard when you have a couple little kids and you do all the stuff I do. And I've been married, like I said, I'm in my 30th year. So,
Yeah.
so I mean, to do a speech too, I don't like being edited, which you guys didn't do to me.
Yeah.
And I don't like shilling for anyone. I like to speak how I feel. And sometimes how I feel is, and I'm in a bad mood or I'm angry, but what I'm angry about, I think everyone else would be too. And those are things we need to change in society. And CAF is a part of that change. It really is. But
For sure.
you also look at society, people with disabilities that are put on Social Security insurance and left out of life forever, have no money, no access, no opportunity. No money, no access, no opportunity. Unemployed, uneducated. It's difficult. And that's why people are so fearful of seeing someone disabled, because, oh my God, we know what happens to those people. Well, oh my God, that doesn't have to happen to those people. And that's the message. I think that if I was going to give CF most credit on anything, they changed the messaging.
Yeah.
And they still do today. It's just more common now that you guys see a lot of athletes that are sickly good with different disabilities that are competing at the highest level of their ability. And that tends to blow my mind too. I'm like, I watch people with certain disabilities get out of bed, get out and train every day. And just to get to the bike, to get out and train sometimes takes an hour, hour and a half just to get out and do all that before they start training. Yeah. And they do it every day. Yeah. Bless them.
Yeah. No kidding. No kidding. All right. Well, listen, Willie, we need to wrap it up. I have a job to go to. Dave doesn't, but I actually have like a real job to get
I
to.
have to. Yeah. Thanks, Mike. Thanks.
But we tease each other because we're good friends. But Willie, man, it's been great having you on the podcast, and the message is, obviously it's a great message for anybody that has a disability, but also just anyone in life, seize the day, just go get after it. And it's something that you've done, I mean, pretty much your whole life, but it seemed like it just got turbocharged after your accident. And it's very inspirational stuff.
Is there, before we go, I don't know this, so I probably should have looked it up. Do you have any sponsors or anyone that you like to give a shout out to? You mentioned obviously the Challenge Athlete Foundation, but if you have anyone else you want to give a shout out to?
A long time ago, when I started working as an ambassador with Challenge Athletes Foundation, I kind of made a promise that you're my spot. They're my peeps.
Yeah.
And that's why, I mean, sure, like I can bitch and whine all you want, but those guys have done a lot to change the lives of thousands. Yeah. I don't even know the number, but the number that's more impactful, one on Willie, when he rides at Leadville, I probably say hi to 1,000 people there. Yeah. 1,000. When I do Alcatraz, everyone knows I've been there for 20 plus years, and we're all jumping off the boat together. Yeah. That's my messaging, is to play the game. And going back to Bob Babbitt, Bob races every weekend, little races. Bob, I don't know, Bob, I know he's 70. Yeah. But he's up every weekend. And he was my role model a long time ago. I was
there you go.
I like saying this to him. I go, God, that guy's no good, but
he shows up every week.
He shows up, right? He keeps showing up.
How about Bob? You guys send this to him, and he's just gonna love that. Tell you, Bob can get the last laugh on me any day he wants, Yeah. But he races all the time, and I thought that was really cool that he shows up and races. Yeah. And then he has this huge network just by racing with the people that go up and show up. They all tend to be pretty happy.
Oh yeah, for sure. So how would somebody follow along with Willie Stewart? Are you doing social media or anything like that? I know you're a featured athlete on the Challenge Athlete Foundation website. Do you do social media at all?
No.
Yeah, my man.
I mean, if you look up One Arm Willie, you can find him. He's
Yeah.
every,
Yeah.
And there was a long time ago, I did this little thing. It's called Armed for the Challenge, but it was a kind of a little short doc. It's kind of a funny story, but I don't want to tell the whole story. But it like won an Emmy Award for a short doc. But it's Armed for the Challenge. But I don't do a lot. I show up, and that's my social network. Is I actually socialize.
Yeah. Yeah. Great.
The real way. The real way.
Awesome.
The real way.
Yeah.
Hey,
All right.
I love you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing this. It's
big.
Thank
you.
Oh, we're so honored to have you on, Willie. Yeah. Okay. Well, listen, Dave and I, we're gonna try to meet up. Hopefully we can meet up with you out at Alcatraz. I don't know how realistic that is for you and your schedule. If nothing else, we'll be out there. Maybe we'll make some kind of crazy sign or something, and we'll be rooting you on.
Let me just tell you, if you show up to Alcatraz, I'll say hello.
Yeah.
And we do some really fun stuff with the other athletes, and all the other athletes I'm with, you guys would love to meet.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Awesome.
They're great people.
Yeah.
All right.
All
Thanks,
right.
Willie,
Super.
Willie, thank you very much, man.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Cheers. Take care, buddy.